All right, Mark, thanks for joining me on the podcast. I'm excited to have you here. How you doing?
Doing good. Yeah, I'm doing really good actually, Hannah. I'm excited to be on the podcast. I'm excited to talk about all the financial advising questions you may have for me. And yeah, I'm just overall excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. So yeah, we are going to talk about financial advising, but first let's get a little bit of a background on you and how you kind of chose the career path going into financial advising.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been I don't want to say round robin, but it's been a series of events that have essentially led me to the career that I'm in right now. A little bit about myself actually is fun fact is America is the third country that I've lived in. Hence the accent. If you viewers are picking up on it, the first country I lived in was Uganda, which is where I would say I'm from because that's where my heritage is from. That's where my family's from. And I was in Uganda up until the age of 11. And from 11, I moved to England, which is where the accent's from. And then from England, I moved to Colorado actually for college. And I ended up playing soccer at the same college that Tana went to. Actually, that's where we know each other from. Uh,
Yeah.
and then that was in Pueblo, Colorado. Ended up graduating a few years ago and landed myself in this field. Specifically, financial advising. I think it's just something that I've always been drawn to. So my educational background actually, so my degree is in economics and finance. So I remember, early on doing that degree with some of the cool classes like principles to finance, which is just an introductory class, investment analysis, and some of those other classes that essentially gave me a glimpse of what working in a financial industry type of job would be like. And I really loved it.
Mhm.
I enjoyed it all. Even the economics classes, being able to talk about bonds and what interest rates are, and looking at how the government plays a role in all of that, really caught my attention early on. So once I looked at the job, I was like, yeah, I think this is a career I want to be in. So I went for it.
The same degree as like finance and economics, but I did not like all the finance stuff as much as you did. It seemed like so. I'm glad I have you as my financial advisor because all that stuff was just like, oh, I don't really love this. I was kind of just like in it and all that stuff, and I was more like all like the numbers and those types of things, not so much like the tools and that you can utilize in financial advising. But my next question would be for you is what are the benefits to someone having someone like you as their financial advisor to kind of guide them through all the tools of investing?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And it's kind of funny. It's funny that like you said, both of us did the same degree, but we ended up enjoying vastly different aspects of it, and that landed us in two different career fields. But um, in regards to the benefits of working with a financial advisor, I would say that there is a kind of like a personalization that you receive with your whole financial planning picture when you work with an advisor, right? So what I mean by that is you get to work one-on-one with someone who actually gets to know you. They get to know you as an individual or as a family if you're planning as a family, or even as a business if you own a business and you're trying to figure out, okay, what does it look like in 10, 20, 30 years for me to have a successful business financially, or as an individual, as a family, like I said. So I would say I think the biggest benefit of working with a financial advisor is that it's the long-lasting relationship that you build with someone who is essentially in charge of your livelihood, right? A lot of people,
Mhm.
a lot of
Yeah.
people connect their finances with their livelihood, and I have thoughts for and against that, but money is a really important tool. Money is a really important tool and an important resource that individuals have, and you want to be able to know the person, and more importantly, you want the person to know you, right? You want the person to know you, to know your personality, because all of that kind of blends into who you are as an investor. So working with a financial advisor who gets to know you, in my opinion, is very important because of that. They get to
Hmm.
know you and they get to invest appropriately to who you are as an individual investor or as a family or as a business, like I said.
Hmm. And so some ways that you can kind of get to know someone, obviously, if you have a good friendship with someone, that's a good way to build a relationship. But at the start, you kind of have them take like a bunch of almost like quizzes and tests to understand what their instincts would be. And how does that help you kind of like see what are the common personality types that you see once people take these quizzes for their like investment strategies?
Yeah. Those quizzes are essentially they're a resource once again to help me as a financial advisor get to know who the client is. So one of them is actually a good one. It's a my priority quiz, right? So it's a quiz that essentially helps me understand how people like to prioritize how they spend their money, because every single person is different, and that's absolutely okay. Some people, once they see a good amount of money in the bank account, the first thing they think about is I want to go on a vacation, right? I want to plan a cruise next year with my The other individual who
Mhm.
sees that same amount of money in their bank account after saving for it, or after investing it correctly, sees that amount of money and they think to themselves, you know what I want to do? I want to do some renovations on my house, right? I want to put more into my emergency
Mhm.
savings. I want to put more towards a degree, right? An education degree, either for myself or for my kids. So, those quizzes
Mhm.
essentially help me figure out how this person as an investor likes to spend their money. And it's my job, to hold them
Mhm.
accountable to things like that. Uh, and, to help them reach some of those goals. But at the end of the day, you might plan a cruise for next year, but if you don't have the right amount to make that happen, then we have to figure out how to change that, right? Invest more, or
Mhm.
do we make
Yeah.
that? Do we essentially make that plan a little bit longer than 1 year, right? Do we look 3 years out
Mhm.
instead? Uh, and the same
Mhm.
thing.
Kind of like a financial accountability partner
Yeah,
would be another way to kind of put it. Because I feel like a lot of people, they get their emotions involved with money, and they're like, oh, I really want to do the trip, and I don't really care about investing for the future right now in order to buy that house because I want to do this trip. And so having another person kind of bounce those ideas off of and hold accountable, I think is very beneficial. That everyone should be looking into having someone like that.
absolutely. And you raised a really good point, because a big part of my job, or the biggest part of my job, is to help people look towards retirement. So,
Mm-hmm.
what are you doing right now in your 20s, 30s, 40s, to make sure that your future self doesn't look back at past self and dislike you?
Mm-hmm.
But, within those decades, it's not just save, 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 right? It's,
Mm-hmm.
how do we also enjoy the money in the present? How do we go on vacations? How do we add renovations to the house, and so on and so forth? But yes, you're 100% right. That's where the accountability portion comes into it. Is
Mm-hmm.
we're doing, we're on the plan for you to reach that retirement goal. But what that means is, we can use some money every so often to go on a vacation. We can use some money, every 5-10 years to do some type of renovation to your house, and so on.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the common investment strategies that people in their 20s would use, and then people that are later on in their 40s, 50s, closer to a retirement age?
Um, so that would vary from advisor to advisor. I think for me, depending on your age, that obviously, like you said, the age definitely plays a factor in what investment
Mm-hmm.
strategy would be good for you. So, if we're strictly thinking people in the 20s and 30s,
Mm-hmm.
I would say make that decision on whether you want to go Roth or traditional,
Mm-hmm.
right? My,
And this is an IRA, a
yes,
Roth or traditional IRA. Okay, and what is that? Can you give us a little understanding of what those
yeah,
are?
yeah. So the biggest difference between those two IRA accounts, or 401k, but specifically IRA right now, the
Mm-hmm.
biggest difference between those two is when you pay taxes into them, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
there's minor differences as well, but the biggest one is, when do you pay taxes?
Mm-hmm.
The Roth situation is, you're paying taxes right now. So it's considered after tax dollars that you're putting into your account.
Mm-hmm.
You're paying taxes in it right now, but what that means is, once you start pulling from that account in the future, you don't have to pay taxes in it, because you've already done that.
Mm-hmm.
The traditional IRA account is the complete opposite. So you don't pay taxes in it right now. You get to deduct your contributions at the end of the year, right? We're in December right now, so whatever you've put in for 2023, you get to deduct it from your IRS bill, right? When tax season comes, beginning of this upcoming year.
Mm-hmm.
But what that means is, you end up paying taxes on that later on when you pull it out. So
Mm-hmm.
there's pros to each, and the biggest, the question to answer for the investor in the 20s or 30s is, do you think your tax rate will be higher or lower in the future?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question to answer, to figure out
Yeah.
which one you'd want to go with.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like most people in their 20s, especially me in my 20s, I am very ambitious, and you think, oh yeah, of course I'm going to have a higher tax rate when I'm older because I'm going to make more money at that time frame. Which means that once you go to start pulling money out of your Roth IRA, you won't have to pay taxes on it. But if it's a traditional, then you're going to have to pay money on the taxes on the money that you're pulling out, meaning that you
Right.
can pay more taxes later on than you do currently when you first put it in, since you're at a lower tax rate. Correct? Is that
Exactly.
kind of like the trade-off that a lot of
That's
people are
exactly.
analyzing? Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Yeah, because the
Yeah.
general rule of thumb is, if you're in your 20s or 30s, you have
Mm-hmm.
you have longevity on your side, right? And you're hoping
Mm-hmm.
that the future version of yourself will be earning more.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to save money on taxes by paying taxes on whatever you put in right now, because this
Mm-hmm.
is going to be the lowest tax bracket that you're going to be in, right?
Yeah.
Let alone not knowing what your social security is going to be like once you retire, right? Let alone what type of policies are going to come out on the federal and state level at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But in regards to the things that you can control, you can obviously control what that salary looks like moving forward. and every single person wants a higher salary.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the hope, and that's the thing that you can control. And
Mhm.
that's why, generally thinking it's a better move for younger investors, like people in their 20s, 30s, and honestly for me even 40s, to go
Mhm.
Roth, for the most part.
Gotcha. So once you get closer to your 50s and 60s, you're getting closer to retire. Is there a different tool that many people use for at that time period of their life, or is it more that they use the traditional basic, or the traditional IRA compared to the Roth?
Yeah. So the older you get, so let's say you open an account for the first time. Let's say you're 55, right? 55 and above. Let's say in your 50s, right? Because that's probably going to be the last decade of real full-time work. So that's probably going to be the decade of your highest earnings. So you would want to go traditional in that situation. But then in regards to other investment strategies, it honestly depends on so many other factors. What do your other investments look like at that time? Do you have properties that are under your portfolio? Do you have honestly, it depends on even your family size, right? There's so many other factors that come into play when you get to that point in regards to what's the next best thing for you. Yeah.
And what about, I hear things about CDs, money market accounts, and even like stocks and bonds. Are those some strategies that you can also utilize anywhere from your 20s to your 50s? It just would come down to knowing yourself as an investor on which route you want to go for and what your plans are as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so that's a good question. Actually, I just thought of another thing in regards to what do those strategies look like and what are the pros and cons to it. Another thing that I thought about for the Roth is depending on. So let's say an individual is in their 50s, right? This is just a scenario. Individuals in their 50s, they have a 401k, which is normally traditional, right? So if you have a 401k that is a work-sponsored plan, so that means your employer gives you this benefits, right? It's a retirement account, and they most likely match it, right, to a certain percentage. But let's say someone in their 50s has this 401k and they've been contributing in it for a couple of decades, but then they realize they want to open something extra. So an example of an investment strategy for them would be, hey, why don't you tax diversify a little bit more and open a Roth IRA? Because you already have traditional, right? So that's pre-tax dollars with a 401k. Why don't you open a Roth for the perks of, once again, never really know what happens policy-wise. But then also you're able to diversify, right? So regardless of what happens from, like I said, federal, state level, you can essentially, play the game a little bit.
Gotcha. Okay.
And another thing with the Roth dollars is, if you see yourself using the 401k and not touching the IRA, right, before you pass away, you can inherit that Roth IRA tax-free to the next person.
Oh, okay.
Because you're already paying your taxes on that.
Yeah.
Right. So you can pass that on to a child or grandchild or whoever you inherited to, and that individual doesn't have to pay taxes on it because you've paid taxes on it.
Yeah.
So that's just another example of someone who's older can look at doing.
Okay, that's really interesting. So with CDs, whenever I think of CDs, I think of like the CD disc you pop in, you put it in the music player or like the DVD player or something.
Right.
But it has a completely different term and it's a different type of investment tool that I feel like not a lot of people know about, and a lot of people just throw that word around like, oh, just do CDs, but people don't actually understand the terms of CDs and what the value that they can provide. Can you give us any information about what CDs are?
Yeah. So CD, certificate of deposit is what that stands for.
Okay, it's good to know. I never knew that.
Yes, a certificate of deposit. You aren't paying attention to those econ classes, right?
Yeah, those don't call me out like that. Yeah.
I'm joking. I don't. If I was in this role, I probably wouldn't know that as well. Like, I don't think I would have remembered that from college. So, but what a CD essentially is, it's a savings product. So, it's a savings product that allows the investor to earn, they get to earn a sum of money based on whatever fixed period of time they've locked away their principal amount to. So what I mean by that is you have different durations for CDs, from as low as 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, all the way up to, I believe, 5 years. I think is the longest one. I think it is 5 years. Yeah. But what you essentially do is, say investor A has $10,000 that they don't foresee needing, and they're relatively a safer investor, rather conservative. So they don't want the ups and downs of the market. They want something a little bit safer. They can put that $10,000 in a 1-year CD, which I think as of this week is about 5.4%. So they receive 5.4% on that $10,000 at various intervals. It depends on the CD, right? Some of them just pay annually, some 6 months, some quarterly. So that's what a CD is.
Gotcha. So is it like a preset interest rate or return that you know you're going to be guaranteed to get once you purchase or put that lump sum money into the CD?
Correct. Yeah. So it's set. Once you purchase that CD, you are locked in. So like I said, 1 year right now, you're locked in for 5.4%, and you don't have to worry about whether it's going to be less or higher. You're locked in for 5.4%.
Gotcha. And you can't take that out early, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
So,
and then with money market accounts, you can take it out early?
Yep. Yep. So think of a money market account like it's essentially a bank account. So it's a type of interest-bearing account it's connected to a financial institution like a credit union or a bank. And what you have in that is you just have higher rates than your regular bank, right? So I think right now you're looking at about a 4.5% return on however much you put in a money market account. The only difference between that and a CD is you have the fixed rate, but it's a highly liquid account. So you can, you have access to your money whenever you want, whenever you need it. Whereas the CD is locked away for that set amount of time.
So if someone were to say want to be saving for a down payment, they could put it into a money market account, knowing that I'm getting close to when I'm going to pull this out and use it, but I'm still getting a small return on saving it in here instead of putting in a standard savings account, which it's like less than 0.5% of a return.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. So the individual or family that are looking for a house, and that's a perfect example of the person who I would say look at money market accounts, or even look at CDs. So if you know that you're locked in, you're not gonna buy a house for a year or for 2 years, look at a CD, get 5.4%, and at the end of the time, that's what you're gonna get. Or money market account, that's giving you roughly 4.6, like I said right now.
Okay. And then what about bonds? How do those kind of play into the differences between a CD and a money market account?
Yep. So bonds are a little bit different. Because they're not. So a little bit different, but a little bit the same. So you're essentially, you're lending money to an institution, and those institutions vary. So CDs and money markets are a little bit. They're not as broad as a bond, right? A bond you can have, you could lend money to the federal government, you can lend money to the state, you can lend money to the city or even town that you live in. And they're essentially tied to specific things like, the roads that we see being built, or the bridges or the railways. A certain amount of the money used for those most likely comes from bonds. So what a bond is that it's a little bit similar in the sense that you're locking away a certain amount of money that the investor wants to lock away. So let's say $10,000 again. You're receiving a fixed amount once again. There's extra security in bonds, especially the ones that are tied to something like the state, like an entity like the state, simply because the state's not going away anytime soon. If you buy a state of Colorado bond for bridge, your return is pretty much it's safe because you're going to get that back.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm assuming bonds have different lengths as well. You can do a couple months, 6 months, a year, and then 5-10 years as well.
Correct. Yep. So same thing like a CD. You have different durations for the bonds, and but you still have that fixed rate. And those two. So the CDs and the bonds are considered fixed income instruments. So that's kind of the umbrella over the two of those investments, fixed income instrument, because the income that you receive is fixed. It's as simple as that.
Okay. And then I feel like the stock market is something that everyone is most familiar with. You kind of you buy a stock and it goes up and down based off of the value of it, and it's not so much fixed as these other CDs, bonds, and money market accounts tend to be. Correct.
Correct. Yep. So stock market is exactly that. So it's a little bit different because you're not lending your money. You're not lending your money, like we said. That's essentially what a bond is. What you're doing in an individual stock is that you're buying a piece of the pie essentially for a company, right? Or piece of the company, right? So let's say Apple. By one stock in Apple, you have a specific share in Apple. So when Apple is doing great, when they release the next iPhone, right? Sales go up, and the overall revenue for the company goes up. That affects the stock, and you get to share in that win for the company. But what that also means is if Apple goes bankrupt for some reason, then you lose your share.
Yeah.
That's the risk behind investing in a specific company like that, is you get to share in the wins, but then you also get to share in the losses if that comes.
Okay. And there's, what's it called when you can invest in a bunch of stocks all kind of put together? What's the term for that?
So either a mutual fund,
Mutual fund,
or an ETF.
Or an ETF. Gotcha. So those are kind of just like a bunch of stocks combined into one that you're kind of investing in the whole of all of them. Correct.
Correct. Yep. So those two. So a mutual fund and an ETF in their makeup is pretty similar. You essentially have a pool of companies that have been brought together to make this one specific fund by the fund manager, right? So a fund manager is like, hey, this is a good group of companies. Let's bring them together. So think S&P 500 right now. So S&P 500 are the most lucrative 500 companies in the country. So all of those would be, for example, in one mutual fund or one ETF. Think VOO, for example, for the ETF side of things. And what you do is when you buy one share of the mutual fund or ETF, you're essentially diversifying yourself into owning a specific fraction of each of those 500 companies, for example, in this situation.
Okay.
So what you get in this is diversification. So going back to the previous example, like I said, if you just own one share of Apple and you wake up tomorrow and Apple's gone, then you've lost that, right? If you have one share in a mutual fund or an ETF, and let's say Apple isn't there, because it would be, right? Because it is a S&P 500, and Apple goes bankrupt tomorrow, your share is still safe because there's still hundreds of other companies holding that up together.
So it seems like there's a lot of stuff and a lot of moving parts to investing with, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, CDs, and all this stuff. And I feel like the common person can't really, keep track of all this, especially when it's not your, you didn't go to school and get a finance degree like you did, and I was even listening half the time. So I mean, so it seems like it'd be a great benefit and a value for someone to have a financial advisor that knows their investing techniques and can kind of guide you on what decisions to make when it can seem very chaotic when there's so many options out there, and you're like, yeah, I want to do something, but I don't know what. And so what are your thoughts on what someone can do to kind of reach out to financial advisors and kind of see who would be a good fit for them?
I would say exactly that. I would say that financial advisor, I mean, I personally wouldn't say that everyone needs a financial advisor in regards to having to have one and having to be a client to one. I don't think that's true. It's not like people sometimes say that we're just as important as doctors. I don't think that's true. But I do think it's worth having a conversation, right? Having a conversation, or having someone who is a financial advisor who can at least look at what you have going on and giving you an honest opinion on whether they can do better than what you have going on right now. Because at the end of the day, it's a service, right? So you end up paying a fee depending on where you go, whether it's Edward Jones or wherever else, whatever. You're paying fees, right? So you want to make sure that whatever you're paying is a fraction in comparison to the return that you get for your, in regards to how healthy your portfolio does over the years. So I would say if you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me. I'm on all social media platforms, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm just under my name.
We'll get to that in 1 second. I just have one last question for you. So are there any other creative ways that someone could invest safely that you can think of, or any other tools that we didn't cover?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I would say there's a lot of really good educational material out there from various different firms, actually, that help. At least if you're a brand new investor, like I said, would it be beneficial to meet with an advisor? Yes, 100%. But it might be more beneficial to you to just do some research, right? Do some research on your laptop. Dedicate 10 minutes a day or something to looking at what are the differences between Roth and traditional. You'd be surprised how many good resources are out there, like NerdWallet. I'm a very big fan of NerdWallet. They simplify everything so well for the average person. I'm a big fan of like Investopedia. That's a really good resource as well. So if I was to highlight two really good resources out there that just they produce material so well for the average person, I would say NerdWallet is one that people should be reading, as well as Investopedia.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you. Where can people reach out to you if they have any questions or would like to talk to you more about financial advising?
I jumped the gun there for a second.
Yeah.
But, if you've started that journey, right? You started by, looking at NerdWallet, Investopedia, and, you feel like, okay, I think the next step is, I have an account that's not doing anything, right? Or I have an account that's been, sucking for the past couple of years. And I need help, right? At that point, then I would say, you should reach out to a financial advisor, and I would love to help. I'd love to help as an individual or as a family or as a business owner. And you can reach me via any of the social media outlets out here, so like Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I'll be under my name, Mark Ngoga. If you can't spell that, I'll put it in the title. So
yep, I'll put it in the title. It'll be in the show notes as well.
So whenever just copy and paste my name in any of those social media platforms.
Yeah.
You find me and you can reach out to me via those.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Mark. I appreciate it. It was a blast, and we'll definitely have to have you on again once you buy your first house.
Yeah, sounds good.